So a little while back, I put a feeler out on my Instagram and on YouTube to see if there's any questions that people had about the filmmaking process, more specifically about the film that I'm currently making. And here's what some of y'all asked. How long does each step take? That's a tough one. I think each project takes as long as it's gonna take. That's the simple answer. But for our project, because it was a micro budget project that was mostly funded by friends and family in the crowdfunding round and bootstrapped by myself, my wife, and our immediate family, our process is completely different from some Hollywood big budget film or even like the more medium budget indie films that come out of like A24 or whatever. Regarding our process, because it was just really my wife and I that took the reins on this project from development into production, we had a couple key players come in and out here and there throughout the process. But it's been the two of us that have really been like steering the ship throughout. Because we have our two kids, Maddie has a day job, and I have clients to attend to on a week to week basis. It's been very difficult to work on the film full time. So we had to really work around our schedules and our busy lives and work in the film at any time that we possibly can. There were weeks where we would be working on the film longer than others and other weeks where we didn't have the time. So to make this incredibly long answer short, the process has been so far a 3 year journey. I started really getting serious about the writing in October of 2020. So it's about to come up on 3 years since we started this whole thing. And each process takes a different amount of time. There's the writing, which took about like 6 months. There's pre-production with casting, location scouting, all that type of stuff. Building your team out, hiring the key roles, and each part of the process takes a significant amount of time and detail. And because it was just the two of us for the most part, it took probably way longer than it could have. But because this is our first film, I think I can't speak for her, but I'm very happy that I had a role in each part of the process so that I could learn it for future films and so that I could speak the language of those people that we'll be putting in those roles instead of wearing so many different hats. But I wouldn't trade this process for anything else because as much as we want to make an amazing film at the end of it, this was also like the most invaluable film school that we could have possibly signed up for. You don't know until you know. And we found out a lot of things the hard way. But that's how you learn sometimes, you know? Do you have your own gear or do you rent it? The simple answer is it's a mix of both. Most films are made through rental houses just because film gear is so expensive. Everything from an amazing tripod to an external monitor to the camera body itself to the lenses. My goodness, the lenses. And not to mention the lighting trucks and packages. We were working on such a small scale, like I mentioned before, but even then, the gear took up a significant amount of our small budget. Luckily enough, I own some gear that we were able to use for the film, and the cinematographers and gaffers that we worked with owned a significant amount of gear as well that helped in the process. And even one of the location sound people owned their own gear. So it was really a mix of rental house and gear that we owned or crew members that we brought on owned. How do you overcome the harder days? This is a really good question, and I feel like this doesn't get asked a lot in filmmaking videos. Um, how do I go about this? Filmmaking is something that gets like very glorified through through things like YouTube or the Oscars or any outlets that really like put filmmakers and actors and anyone involved on like some sort of pedestal, but the work itself is very difficult. And there are days where, especially as a writer director and someone who's like really in the weeds of the project, um, there are days where it is very hard to keep going. And I think my biggest advice to anyone like struggling in filmmaking is you have to have a big enough reason to be doing the filmmaking in the first place, or else you won't be able to sustain a career in it, because it's filled with many obstacles, and sometimes you feel like a triathlete in the whole process, you know. For me, what helps me get through like the difficult days is remembering why I'm doing this in the first place. And particularly for this project, it's such a personal project to me and such a personal story and something that I view as very important. So I have that like why answered that keeps like me going forward. But you can ask my partner. There's many days where she has to talk to me and pick my spirits up, and so many days where I'm like doubting myself and doubting the reasons for making this project and doubting if it could even be a good project at the end of the day. There's like, it's easy to doubt yourself in this whole process because it's like years of work, and you don't want to feel like the years that you're putting into something ultimately is for nothing. And with filmmaking at the level that we're doing at the moment, it could very well end up on a random streaming service like YouTube or Vimeo, and um, maybe you'll feel like some sort of failure because it didn't have a theatrical release or get picked up by like A24 or one of those, or Neon or something prestigious like this. But for me, I look at this filmmaking thing as a long game, and I'm in it for the long haul. So I know that this is just a first step. So no matter what comes from this movie, I will accept and be happy with and be better for it for making this movie. And it'll just be one of those things along the way in a hopefully long career. So it's easy to get caught up in the weeds and the daily grind. But I think the most important thing we can do to get out of that like struggle is to zoom out and really see what we're doing this for and why we fell in love with it in the first place. So yeah, that feels like a good place to end this. I hope the three of you learned some things from my journey, and I'll continue posting on here and making updates about where we're currently at in the filmmaking process. And I hope it's something that you're interested in and get something from. Yeah, take care.